Right. And this topic also has a link with the Berlin Conference. Because one of the terms of the Berlin Conference was to ensure that the colonizer or Nyigenike Daupamba yacho was supposed to have a documentation, right? So my treaties are part and parcel of that. These were sort of agreements they made with the leaders of the areas they colonized, so that they could go through something like that. Right. So we are going to mainly look at the treaties leading to colonization. Then there is this part of the identify forms of response to colonization. Identify forms of response to colonization. We also have to look into that. How they resisted, because one were now to Rwanyika. So Vakadiyekta was saying that's quite important. Right. So we are going to start with the treaties signed, and there were a couple of treaties. So I'll try to explain Ese Akadaro. The ones are two, but we're going to explain Ese Akadaro. So pana vanonzi vana Baines Treaty, vana Grobler Treaty, pana important acho kunyanya rat concession neMoffat Treaty, because ndo vakanyatsa leader to the colonization. So we have the Baines Treaty. We have like the Baines Treaty of 1871. We have the Grobler Treaty. We have the Moffat Treaty. We have the Rat Concession. We have the Lippert Concession. So I explain each and every treaty to your advantage. Right. So they started with the Limpopo Treaty. Varungu wacha approach. Varuda something, So this was a mineral concession to the London and Limpopo Company in the Tati area. So they agreed that there was to be erection of buildings and operation of machines by the company. The company was to make roads. Remember, takataura pamaterms pepe kuti vanenge vacolonize vanofanira kuratidza real development in that country. They have to do something, right? The company was given mining rights, and Lobengula was to get £120 per month, right? So there was also the Baines Treaty of 1871. It was a verbal agreement. Kachiti verbal agreement vakataurirana pachirume nemuromo. It was between Lobengula and Thomas Baines. Then Baines was given the right to. And ukanota sama treaties mazhinji. Varungu vanga vanoti paZimbabwe pakanona. So vaida like minerals. So like it was Baines was given the right to exploit minerals in the area between Gweru and Unyani rivers. And however, Baines died before registering his treaty. Right. So there was the Grobler Treaty. It was signed between Lobengula and the Boers. It was negotiated between Piet Grobler, Frederick Grobler, and Lobengula. So Grobler was representing the Transvaal or the Boers. They had already established themselves in South Africa. So they thought that the establishments they had, particularly the discovery of gold, what they called the first land, was going to stretch into Zimbabwe. So at that time, that made the colonization of Zimbabwe inevitable. It was unavoidable. It was going to happen whether you liked it or not, because there was imperialistic competition. Yes. So it was signed between Lobengula and the Boers, right? So there was to be everlasting peace between the Ndebele and the Boers. That were the terms, those were Wakavumirana. And again, a Boer permanent representative, a council, was to be stationed in Bulawayo to administer justice to Boers who might violate Lobengula's laws. And the Boers carrying passports from the Transvaal were to be allowed entry into Zimbabwe. So only Boers carrying passports were to be allowed into Zimbabwe, and the Boers were allowed to prospect for minerals or to check for minerals. And again, Lobengula was to catch and extradite all criminals who escaped from the South African Boer Republic. So Lobengula akabvanisha pakauya vanhu vanenge vada kutora nyika yako kana kuti vada kuita zvinhu zvakadhakwa munyika mako, une power rekuwadzosera back to South Africa. And hunters and prospectors from South African Boer Republic would be allowed to operate in Lobengula's kingdom. And again, Lobengula Agabanzo, he was supposed to protect the Transvaal citizens who visited this country. Yeah, because my Transvaal citizens don't have powers actually. Yes. So the Ndebele were committed, and Lobengula was to protect. The Ndebele were committed to provide military assistance to Transvaal if and when asked to do so. And Lobengula was to be recognized as a paramount chief. There was this explanation that I was making, or that I made to the A levels. The Chiti Lobengula ndiye aionekwa as king of both. Zimbabwe by then was divided into Mashonaland and Matabeleland. So Lobengula influence yake ingekawandira kuMatabeleland. But it's not like they just wanted to colonize Matabeleland yet. They wanted to colonize the whole of Zimbabwe. So they technically made Lobengula the king of Zimbabwe, something like that. Right. So did the Grobler Treaty protect the Ndebele state from colonialism? Yes, it did. It protected the Ndebele state from invasion by the Boers or other Europeans. Delayed the occupation of the Ndebele state by other groups, and the treaty created friendship between Ndebele and the Boers. But however, there was imperialistic competition. Yes. So Lobengula faced the threats from the Portuguese and the British. The treaty could not prevent the British from entering into treaties with Lobengula. Lobengula had to sign the Muffat Treaty and the Rand Concession, which led to the colonization of Zimbabwe. And the military assistance was one-sided. It increased the scramble for Zimbabwe. So since the time competition, my Boers are asking where guide Zimbabwe. My Germans are into it now, my Portuguese are in now. The leading colonizer was Britain. Britain in the Zimbabwe frigates. So they had to repudiate the Grobler Treaty because we have already established Lobengula angatopinda agreement nema Boers, which means my Boers angatwapa wangatosvika pakona pekuda kutotora nyika. Then Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes, ndiye akazolida akatuma anonzi John Smith Moffat. What happened here is, I think we once touched on the in history. There's what we call the Ndebele state. The Ndebele state was founded by Mzilikazi. But Ndebele state was established through a migratory movement. Like the original Kumalo came from South Africa to Zimbabwe. That's why our brothers and sisters in Blawa and one share the same culture and one in South Africa. That is. Yes. Why? Because most of the Ndebele people in Matabeleland, they are originally from what? From South Africa, from the Nguni land. So Mzilikazi Baiba to Zimbabwe. Panentonzi Mzilikazi journey from South Africa to Zimbabwe. Bai Famba, Doba Gasangana with this missionary in Robert Moffat. Then Vaukanzirai friendship. So later on, vanozvita friends. Because mwana waMzilikazi ndiye ainzi Lobengula. Then mwana waRobert Moffat ndiye ainzi John Smith Moffat. And vanga vatombogara vari missionaries muNdebele state. And sorry, what was now happening is the missionaries had already come into the Ndebele state. They had tried to make converts. Kana kuti vakaedza nepese pavanogona kuti vatendeutse vanhu. But Zagaramba. That's why you find out I was always explaining this. Uchonoti machechi mazhinji ane missions ekutanga. The reason why they did so was trying to lure people to the church. Atinoti mission schools. Ekuti panenge pari pachikoro pabody. but pane church, pane clinic, pane dzimba dzematicha. That's not the setup of a real school. Akusuti makaiswa chikoro nekuti munodiwa stereo. No, it was a way to lure people into the church. So waituka sodo goka gumboro kumombe wouya urapiwa pakliniki yemamisheni wonza apa kumwe china ito tusodo goke kuchibva wapinda muchechi uri kuona the system like they incorporated some they fused the religion and social responsibility. Yes, to an extent kuti unotoona kana kuti muroma munorohwa ngoma it's an African instrument with African original. Varungu taizoti vairidza inonzi organ nepiano, but dzakuridzwa machechi medu ukaenda kuanglican methodist wai dziri kuridzwa vaida kuincorporata African traditional religion because vanhu vairesista kutendeuka kuenda kuchristianity, so vakatanga kuadopta tumwe tuzviwanhu kuti vanhu vadi vauye wabata understanding yacho. Yes, that's the thing. So so vana Moffat vanhu vekuti vanga vauya futi vakambozama zvekuda kutendeutsa vanhu zvikaramba vakuchiita engage into politics kuti vawane maconference. So Moffat enjoyed an advantage when he negotiated for this treaty with Lobengula because he had worked among the Ndebele for so long, and Lobengula trusted him as an honest man. His father Robert Moffat was a close friend of Lobengula's father Mzilikazi, and their fathers had signed a treaty. So Lobengula thought he was renewing the old treaty. So what did they agree on? Number one, there was to be everlasting peace and friendship between Lobengula and the British, and Lobengula was not to enter into any other agreement without the consent of the British. Because to competition yekupambwa kwenyika. So Lobengula akatobva atoudzwa materms kuti haachafaniri kupinda into any agreement with any country. And Lobengula was to get British protection, and the Grobler Treaty was to be cancelled. And Lobengula was to not give any part of the country to any other country. And Lobengula agreed to be a friend of the British Queen. So tsukuti isusu kuti munzi macolonizer munofanira muine magwaro or documentation inoratidza kuti mataurira nevanhu vamuda kucolonize. So Cecil John Rhodes ndosaka chona Zimbabwe chinzi Rhodesia ndiye akacolonize Zimbabwe nekambani yake inonzi British South African Company. So when he got the documentation of the Moffat Treaty, he wasn't convinced enough kuti chinhu chakadai chingatora nyika. So the Moffat Treaty was the foundation of the Rand Concession of October 1888. So like it was signed between Lobengula and the British. Rhodes used the Moffat Treaty to deal away with with the Germans. Remember, Lobengula had already entered into an agreement with with the Boers, sorry, not with the Germans. We used the Moffat Treaty to keep the Germans, Boers, and the Portuguese out of Matabele and Mashonaland. Like the Moffat Treaty, akaishandisa kuti awane position. Urubata sense yacho. Go yake ngere kusvika parand concession. But Moffat Treaty akaishandisa kuti adile nema competitors ake once and for all. Yes. So Rhodes sent Charles Rudd, Francis Thompson ndosaka chizi Rudd concession. Akatumira inzi Charles Rudd, Francis Thompson and Rockford Maguire to persuade Lobengula to grant them a concession. Right. And these people were not just laymen. Pakasarudza varume ava anongoenda paroad vati varume 100 tinonyudza Lobengula. They were carefully chosen men and experts in their own right. Right. So there was Charles Daniel Rudd. He was a what? He was a business partner. He was a business person who came from South Africa in 1866 on medical grounds. He was a diamond dealer who could trick anyone into submission. And he was Rhodes' friend. Some accounts say that they even learned together at Oxford. Right. Then there was Francis Thompson. He was even nicknamed Matabele. But he was very fluent in native languages. Then there was Rockford Maguire. He was a lawyer by profession again. So there was John Dreyer, who was the wagon driver, who was also a signatory. So there was also Reverend Charles Hill. My missionaries, they were now engaged in politics because the Rekutendeuts on the Bible fair Zazaram. Panotonzi Makore Makati Vakatoshaya vanhu vekutendeuts. Ende vaitopiwa anonzi maroyal seal, maroyal limitations ekuti vainzi munofanira kuparidza kubva apa muchisvika apa. Right. So there was also John Smith Moffat, who was a missionary and Lobengula's friend. So there was Sir Sidney Shepard, and Loche and Sikombo. They were Lobengula's trusted indunas. Those people were bribed. Ndo vanhu vari close kuna Lobengula. Wekutoti iye Lobengula neumambo hwake hwese aitombwakumbira ma-ideas, but those people were paid so that they could what? Convince Lobengula to sign. So what were the terms of the Rand concession? They were divided into two. There were written terms. The written terms favored the what? The whites. Then the non-verbal terms, the written terms were the non-verbal, right? The verbal terms, zvakaita zvekutaurwa nemurongo zvaifevhera chi Lobengula. Uri kuona chisodzi sacho? Because zvinhu zvakanyorwa, you can argue nezvinhu zvakanyorwa. Because zvakanyorwa, it's in black and white. But kana zvisina kunyorwa, unogona kutotaura kuti zvinombotaura da. Because hapana patakanyorana pasi. Right, written terms. The BISAC was granted the right to exploit minerals, and the BISAC was granted the authority statement to do all things they might deem necessary. Remember Papa Nana Rofort Maguire, my lawyer. Vanga wakabika nechimwe chirungu chekuti even an ordinary person anokonzwa English haanzwisise zvimwe zvinhu. Hapanos to do all things. Hapanos to do things they might deem necessary. To do all things. So when rekuti iro rakutonyudzisa nyika yese. Riri kutopa ma-whites permission yekuuya woita all things zvawafuma wangoita munyika. So Lobengula was to be given £100 per month, and Lobengula was to be given 1,000 rifles and 100 rounds of ammunition, and a gunboat was to be stationed on the Zambezi Valley, or he was to be given £500. Then verbal agreements, and not more than 10 men were to enter into the kingdom and dig only one hole. And the few whites who do not mine near towns, and as Waruma Wachisika, they were to surrender their weapons on arrival into Zimbabwe, and all the whites who came to Matabeleland were to be under Lobengula's jurisdiction. Agabanza Lobengula such my whites under you. So the whites to come to Matabeleland were to fight in defense of the Ndebele state, and the roads would advertise the concession in South African newspapers, and whites were not to stay permanently. That was not true, because my whites are pioneer So people who were involved in the negotiations, Charles Rad, Rumford Maguire, Charles Helm, John Smith Moffat, Loche, and Sikombo. Did the Ndebele benefit from the Rad concession? Like they benefited other European agents were kept out of the Lobengula's country because at least he was dealing with one person, and so the treaty controlled the influx of whites into the Ndebele state. Lobengula even received the first monthly salary and some old guns, but so at the end of the day, there was loss of land, loss of independence, loss of ghetto, exploitation of minerals increased. The treaty led to the invasion of the country. The treaty legalized the occupation of Zimbabwe. It caused disunity in the state. It led to the execution of Loche. Lobengula stopped trusting his indunas. He even ended up losing his life because he ended up having the Anglo-Ndebele War. We ended up having the Anglo-Ndebele War. So those are some of the notes in detail. There's a history of analyze something like that. So next lesson, it's part of identify forms of resistance to colonization. How do they resist? ndo patava kupinda inonzi Anglo-Ndebele War. So we'll be describing the events that lead to the Anglo-Ndebele War. I think I need 2 lessons. The events which lead to the Anglo-Ndebele War tichatotangira kubva papioneer column kupinda kwakaita ma-whites, because ma-whites mapindira vakaita vakasvikira kumashonalend side ende vanga vakapromisana gold, tanzi kumashonalend ndo kwakazara gold. Then ubva kwafamba marume ekuti aiva gold riri kumaTebeleland. Then they had to fight with the Ndebele, ndo yatokuti Anglo-Ndebele War. Yes. So that's what we are going to look at from tomorrow. Yes.